Let's start this.
Hello everyone, welcome to the guide. This is going to be my ultimate guide to Zafina in Tekken 7. It's ultimate, I guess, in the sense that I want it to be good, but also in the sense that this is version 4.2 and likely the last version of Zafina that we'll see in this game. Hopefully that means that this is accurate for whenever you watch it. I'm not going to have the camera on for this one. This character has a lot of moves. I have a feeling I'm going to be sitting here for a while, and I just want to be as comfortable as possible. Basically what I'm trying to say is that I'm not exactly wearing clothes right now. I'm also not going to do time codes for specific sections because I've just found that these guides are better when I let myself flow between different topics a little bit. Hopefully that makes sense. But like I said, many things to talk about, so let's get started. Welcome to Zafina, the belly dancer from hell, and in my opinion, one of the coolest designs in all of fighting games. This character is amazing to look at and a lot of fun to play. If you haven't tried her, I recommend it. If you play her already, then I hope you learn something new. Before we jump into character design and overall playstyle, I just want to talk a little bit about recommended key bindings for the character. When I play this character, I will always have my 1+2 button bound to a spare button, or my 1+2 input. I'm doing this on PS4 pad right now, so I'm using the R1 button. And the reason for that is you have this move called the Cursed Crow. It's a just frame move and a very important move for the character. You use it for ending combos. If you're good, you use it for whiff punishment. And it's not a difficult just frame to learn. It's back 1 and then 1+2. But when you're doing it in a match, it's very nice to have a 1+2 button because then all you have to worry about is the timing. There's no risk of you messing up not pressing the 1 and the 2 button at the same time if they're the same buttons. That's just a little quality of life thing. I will also bind my 2+3 button or my 2+3 input to a button. I use L1 for this. And the reason for that is your rage drive is for 2+3, and it's a little bit of an awkward input depending on what controller you use. On PS4 pad, for example, the buttons are oriented where you might have to change your grip in order to press it well, and because this is a fast move that you use for interruption, for punishment, you want to get it out really quickly and you don't want to lose any time having to switch up your grip. So I just like to have a dedicated rage drive button, but this is obviously down to preference. And it's going to depend on what controller you are using. Okay, let's start talking about what kind of a character we're dealing with. So the most famous feature, the most defining feature of Zafina is that she has the best backdash of any character in this game, which is a really cool superpower to have, especially if you're a bit of an old school player like me and you love to play Tekken using movement to create whiffs. You know, it's sort of a traditional and fun Tekken playstyle that many people really enjoy. I don't want you to be intimidated if you don't use a lot of Korean backdash canceling right now, thinking that you have to be very good at that to play this character. Korean backdashing is a very important technique to practice and something that you should try and master, but the really cool thing about having the best backdash in the game is usually a single backdash is enough. So you do a lot of things like single low poke into single backdash, and as you can tell right there, that's a perfect amount of space for creating a nice little whiff and getting a whiff punish. So the single backdash is really the most important thing with Zafina because it's so powerful, but of course in some situations it's going to be very useful to cancel as well. But single backdash is very big, and then you're moving around the screen or the stage. You have good sideways movement as well, and then you're trying to hit your opponent with a couple of different whiff punishers that I'm going to be talking about later. And then the other thing that you do, the other main sort of style of the character, is based around stance mix-ups. So you have 3 different stances with the character, and this is where it gets a little bit more advanced, but they've changed the stances where they're all effective for mix-ups right now. So you've got your Scarecrow, you've got Mantis, and you've got Tarantula. And they all have strong mids, they all have strong lows, and you're going to be using all of them for creating mix-ups. The cool thing about them is they tend to flow into one another, which means that you create these chains of mix-ups where you go in with advantage into one stance, mix, and if you're successful, you get to mix again until your opponent stops you, reacts to something, punishes you, or you decide to slink back out to your preferred range, and then you sort of start over. Kind of like how the character works. So a lot of evasive movement, a lot of whiff punishment, and then when you go in, it's all about stance mix-ups. I'm going to talk first about the different moves that Zafina uses when she's not in any stance and go through that, and then we're going to talk about the different stances one by one. And I think I think a really good place to start with this character is talking about those whiff punishers that I mentioned earlier. So the star of the show here really is the down forward 2. This is a fantastic mid launcher. If you listen to some of my earlier videos on the character, I'll say that I'm not a huge fan of this, that I think it's a little bit overestimated, and I prefer to whiff punish with this string right here. But I've learned since then, playing more, that that's actually wrong. Down forward 2 is fantastic, and it is the preferred whiff punisher that you do want to use. 16 frames might seem a little bit slow. You just have to make sure that you have this thing locked and loaded, because it's just very, very good. So 16 frames, good range. It's going to launch crouchers, of course, so you can use it for mix-up situations as well. And it's got a high crush, so it's just a fantastic launcher overall. And you pay, 1 frame of impact speed. We would have loved this at 15. We get it at 16, but all the other properties are so good that I think it's worth it. Of course, it's not going to be safe on block. And to demonstrate that, let's have some guard all here. So you can tell right there it's going to be a predictable -12, but fantastic. So when you're doing those single back dashes or multiple back dashes, this is the main thing you go to create your whiffs or your whiff punishes, and you can use it, of course, after evading something to the side as well. But if you think this is a little bit on the slow side, you would like something a bit faster, you do have the fantastic down forward 3-4. And this gives you guaranteed damage, so you can either do a back 3 for 50, or you can do a down back 4-2 for 49, which is always my preferred option. I lose 1 point of damage, but this is ridiculously consistent, and it gives amazing Oki. So in terms of consistency, if I hit paw at like this weird angle, you can tell that it's probably still going to work, even when it really looks like it shouldn't. So it's just very good for that, and it can sometimes even, give you some interesting wall situations. But in terms of the Oki, the thing I love to do when I apply this is I'll run up, and I have plenty of time, and then I'll crouch as my opponent is trying to get off the ground. And when I'm here, I can either stay down here and do a full crouch low. I can wake up together with my opponent with a while standing move. And what I love to do, actually, and you've seen me do it in gameplay, is as they stand up, I apply a while standing 3 like that. This move is plus on block, and a lot of people don't know that. It's +5, and you get a Scarecrow mix-up for that, so they will not be aware, they will swing, and then you can use a Scarecrow counter-hit launcher and get a lot of damage. But, a lot of different possible options here, but the Oki situation is just really good, which is another reason I prefer the down back 4-2 for my guaranteed damage follow-up here. Another really, really great whiff punisher that you have, and a move that I rely on a lot when I play this character. I think it might be, one of the top 3 moves or strings of the character, and it's 1+2 4. So you have this string 1+2 4-4. Very powerful. We're going to talk a bit more about it later. But the first 2 hits are natural, so you can use this for a whiff punish. It's got enough range that you can use this for some pushback moves. It's just super reliable, and compared to the other 2 whiff punishers I've mentioned, it's actually quite safe. It's very dangerous for the opponent to try and punish or contend with this string, because every hit of this 3-hit string has the potential to become a powerful launcher. I'm going to talk about that later. But I love this. It also hits very low, it hits very far, it hits to the sides. It's just an amazing, amazing move overall. I love this thing. It's also your main counter hit launcher. It's so fantastic. Finally, for specifically whiff punishment, a favorite of mine is the back one, 1+2, the Cursed Crow that we talked about earlier. This is 18, so a bit on the slow side, but it has great range and obviously good damage. It also feels cool. It's like an advanced cool thing to do with the character, right? But one of the best situations for applying this is you knock the opponent down and away, and as you're going in, you could dash block, and if they get off the ground with some sort of attack and get up 3 and get up 4, you can stand out of the range of that and then apply this, and it's going to be fantastic for a 50 damage, punish on that wake up, where your other launchers might not reach. And if you're dealing with a pushback move that has, that is -18 or more, you can use it for that as well. But it is something to keep in mind. It does feel amazing and always seems to surprise your opponent when you do it successfully as a whiff punisher. So those are some of the main options for that. So make sure that you stay mobile, that you do a lot of backdashing, that you try and sidestep, and then apply these, and you're going to get nice, big, powerful combos for it. All right, let's talk about the other most important moves that Zafina uses in neutral, and then I'm going to start talking about some lows after that. So I think when you're playing neutral with this character and you're staying mobile, really the most important move that you just throw all the time, in some matches it can make up as much as like half of everything you do, is forward forward 4. This move is fantastic. I mean, it's so good, so reliable. The reliability is really the thing here. But it's a homing, long range, safe on block mid. So you can think of it kind of like her version of a Demon Paw or a Bloody Claw. It's this, chunky mid check that you can throw from like half screen, or anytime you have a little bit of space, really. This close, it might be a little bit on the slow side, but as long as you have a little bit of space, it's amazing. And it's just not going to let you down. So you check them with it over and over. If they block it, no big deal. If you knock them down, you can run and apply Oki, or you can stay out and keep doing it. It's just a good idea. It splats at the wall. It breaks walls as well. It has a spin property that will almost never come into play. The only time it happens is if you throw this move and the opponent just happens to be in the air because they're flying or jumping or doing a hop kick, and that might spin them, and then you have to like run in and you can convert and do a little combo. But something to keep in mind, but not something that the move is used for. So just throw this constantly, and I think, when you're new to the character and you're playing online and you have that feeling of you don't really know what you should be doing or should be applying, and you become a bit passive, just throw a couple of these, because it's just almost always a good idea. Fantastic. And mix up your timing. It has a little bit of a slow down or extended hitbox where the foot kind of rotates slowly, and sometimes it even seems to have a bit of ghost range. So fantastic move. Next, I want to talk about your down forward 1 string, and this is also extremely important, but also very good for the character. So the down forward 1 is your 13 frame mid poke, kind of standard. The only thing that sticks out is that on block, it's -5, which is quite a lot. But apart from that, same impact speed, hits low to the ground, +7 on hit. So it's a very solid down forward 1. It's very good. And it gets away with having slightly worse frame data on block, because the extensions on this thing make it really fantastic. So the first extension is the down forward 1/4. This is natural for 28. It's safe on block, but the second hit is a duckable high, so that's potentially dangerous. And this is one of your main block punishers, and it's your main wall splatting move, so it's very important. The reason your opponent might not want to attempt to duck this is you also have a mid extension down forward 1/2. This is 26 as opposed to 28. So you only lose 2 damage, but this is punishable on block at -13. But they're also going to hesitate to block punish that, because you have a third hit, a second extension, which is the down forward 1/2/1. And the final hit, as you can tell, is really quite delayable. And this is super cool, because the last hit actually has a counter hit property where you can get a guaranteed back 3 here for pretty big damage. And because you can delay it, it gets really quite tricky. Should they attempt to duck and maybe get hit by the second hit here? Should they attempt to punish this second hit here, the mid, and risk getting counter hit? Or should they wait and be patient, look for the final hit, and then do a punisher there? So as long as you keep mixing up your options, as long as you keep them guessing here, it's actually very safe to apply this string, and it's just extremely good. The down forward 1 by itself, you throw a lot. It's just super good. So great down forward 1 string, which is such a resource for a character like this. And between the down forward 1 and the forward 4, that's going to make up like a chunk of everything you do in neutral. Really sort of big, easy to understand, very Tekken-y, key to the character right here. So I think this is where you start, and then you just add things, really good moves. Next, we have 443, important move to talk about. This is one of your main pressure tools. It's your heavy, chunky mid that gives you advantage on block. It has the option of transitioning into Scarecrow, You get +4 if you do. You get +4 if you don't. On block, that is, which is very good. If it connects, obviously you get more +9, which is really great as well. So the thing about this move is that it's a little bit slow to come out. It's a little bit on the slow side, and you could get counter hit or evaded on the way in. But as long as you don't, everything else about this is fantastic. It's such a good tool for creating pressure. So it's a counter hit launcher, which is great, and it leads to big damage. You can get a huge combo whether you Scarecrow transition or not, so that's really good. It hits super low to the ground. It can hit people who are rolling, not if they stay grounded, but if they are trying to get off by rolling to the side. It will do big damage to that, so it's one of my favorite Oki tools as well. So just amazing. And like I said, when you go in with this character, really what you want to do is stance mix-ups. And this sets this up because on block or on hit, you go into Scarecrow and you can do powerful stuff. Even with +4, this stance is dangerous because you have 10 frame jab and 13 frame mids from this. So just great way of creating those mix-ups. You can throw it like a check. Sometimes you get a counter hit, which is really good, and then you do a big combo. But I think really my favorite application of this is as that Oki tool, because it's just really difficult for them to get off the ground when you're throwing this. If they move, they get hit. If they do a get-up kick, they get counter hit for a huge combo. If they stand up and block it, then you get advantage, and then you get to mix. So only really staying grounded truly beats it, and it's fantastic for that. So something that it's going to be a bit scared to throw it a lot at first, because it leaves you open on the way in. But apart from that, great move. You also use it sometimes for breaking floors. The extension is launch punishable. It's full for 3, 1 + 2, -16 with a bit of pushback. I use this once in a blue moon to like trick people as a trap. Say that I need one more hit to finish a round. I'll throw this and then do the extension, and the opponent isn't used to seeing the extension. They swing and I get a mid that knocks down. It also wall splats, so this becomes pretty good at the wall, but be careful and use it sparingly because a good opponent will make you hurt for applying it too much. That's the 4-4-3. Your jabs with the character, you have a pretty standard 1-2. It's not fantastic. The one jab by itself is actually pretty good, but my favorite jab string or extension is the 1-3. I think this is one of your main fast poking tools. I use this for small whiffs if I'm like stepping and the opponent does something small. Or just need to get something, out really fast. Natural, 21 damage. It's your main block punisher for 10 frames, actually. But the cool thing about it is, if you go into Scarecrow, which it will do automatically, you get +7 in Scarecrow. And if Scarecrow is dangerous with +4, you can imagine how much more dangerous it is with +7. This is a fantastic mix-up situation. You can go straight into this and do a lot of damage. If you hold back to not do the Scarecrow transition, you only get +1. So it's up to you. The reason it might be scary, the reason you might not want to go into Scarecrow is that this stance cannot block. And so you pretty much have to decide and be confident about what you want to do when you go into it. Otherwise, you leave yourself very open. But 1-3 is fantastic. And I use it a lot for a quick poke and sort of like my normal jab string. The way a character would use, a slightly better 1-2 or something like that. Finally, let's talk a bit more about 1 + 2 and why it's so fantastic. So like I said, this is your main counter hit launcher. You get big damage for counter hitting with this 16 frame, very chunky, very large mid. Fantastic for Oki. It also hits people who are trying to get off the ground. If they're rolling or anything, it doesn't hit grounded, but it almost hits grounded kind of a thing. So a lot of good 15 frames. Sorry, I'm going to have a little bit of water here. A lot of fast counter hit mids that are launchers impact at 15. It's kind of the standard. With Zafina at 16. But you're more than willing to sacrifice 1 frame to get these fantastic properties. This move is crazy good. I'll mention that it's actually your combo on the back. This entire string becomes natural, of course, and then you get a guaranteed back 3 for huge damage. So that's good. First hit is a counter hit launcher. The second hit makes the third hit natural. And the third hit is a normal hit launcher, which means that the second hit is also kind of a counter hit launcher. And then, of course, the third hit by itself is a normal hit launcher. And you can get a combo. So every single hit can become a huge combo. This is one of your most damaging launchers with the character. Now, the way the opponent needs to defend against this, and you need to be aware of this as the applier of the string, is that they can actually option select the second and third hits, because the second hit, as you can tell, is -10, which is actually pretty good that it's only -10. And then the third hit can actually be interrupted by a 10-frame move. And that means that as long as they do a 10-frame move in the gap between the second and third hits, they will punish the second hit if that's all you do, and interrupt the third hit if that's what you do. And that's even more dangerous against the character who has like a 10-frame counter hit. So you have to be a bit careful. And people know this. Once you get up into the ranks, people are very good. They've taught themselves to do 10-frame moves in that gap. So the way you get around that as the Zafina user is you throw the first hit a lot. Which is, very safe, and then they're going to stand there worrying about the second and third and get nothing. So very similar to what I said about the down forward one string. The main thing here is keep changing your options, keep alternating the amounts of hits that you do. If there are delays in your strings, play around with the delays so that the opponent can never confidently make a choice. Force them to guess, because as long as they're confused and guessing, things are going to be in your favor, even if they will get it right sometimes and you eat a punish. But this is just really good. Like I said, I use it for whiff punishment as well. Single backdash into this really works. And if you get that counter hit, you get massive combo. So what a fantastic move. Use it a lot. Don't abuse it, but always keep it in mind. This is one of my favorites. All right, I think I want to talk about a couple of lows here. And the thing about your lows with Zafina is that the down 3 is one of the best lows in the game and very sort of key. So I'm going to go in depth with this at the end of this section. I'll start with a couple of other lows. One famous one, of course, is the back 1+2. This is very unique. You don't see many moves like this in this game. 16 frames to impact is fast, but it's ridiculously fast for a move that hits from like basically half screen. It's got massive range and insane crush properties. These were nerfed, but they're still very good, where this goes under all highs and some mids, some low profiling mids even. So it's one of the cheekiest and best harassment and round ending tools. The one weakness of the move, it's kind of like Dragunov's down 2. It's so good and can become so frequent that the opponent can predict it easily, and it's very liable to get low parried. So the way you have to use this low is, say it's the end of the round, another one of these is going to take the round, and I dash block or I run into the range where I would usually apply this. If you wait just a fraction of a second and mix up your timing a little bit, you can throw them off, because they will attempt the low parry and stand back up, and you get the hit. Or you can try and sneak it in where the opponent will not be expecting it. So one of my favorites, I do this sequence. The opponent is waiting for the second hit of this string right here, so they're hesitating, and then I throw a cheeky one of these in there, and I get, an extra 12 damage. So far, I don't think anybody's blocked that little setup, so there you go. But yeah, the low is fantastic for everything it does, but you have to just alternate and be tricky with your timing, and you're going to get a lot of mileage out of this thing. One of the best round enders in the game. I would say don't open the round with it in higher ranks. It's kind of common online, and good players are usually prepared for it, and you don't want to start a round getting launched, because it is actually launch punishable when they do block it. So important to keep in mind. I showed you the down back 4. This is a favorite of mine because it's got good range and tracking, low profiles, and it moves forward. So if I'm applying, a lot of pressure and I want to keep going, I'll do this and I slide in. The reason it creates a bunch of mental frames is that extension. This is a natural counter hit combo for big damage. Doesn't really happen often. It might, there are super cheeky gimmicky things you can do where you key charge into this for a guaranteed launch. I wouldn't recommend it, but could be fun. But the reason the extension exists and is a mid means that people hesitate when they see this, and then you get your mental frames and you can apply something else. So it is a good low for that. Down back 3, now this is a low that my viewers swear by. They get frustrated when I apparently don't use it enough in my gameplay. I probably should, because it is very good. It's got iffy but not bad range for a low poke. If you hold back to not transition into Scarecrow, it's ±0, which I think is good. If you do go into Scarecrow, you get +3. And that's actually enough to make Scarecrow dangerous, because you have these 13 frame mids, but you also have a 14 frame armored launcher. So it's not like the opponent can just not worry about Scarecrow because it has, just a small amount of advantage on the way in. So a really good little thing here. My favorite way to use this move is to apply Oki with it, because it hits on the ground. So if the opponent's knocked down like this, I do this, I go into Scarecrow, and now, because my opponent can't escape backwards because of the wall, I get to apply very powerful Scarecrow Oki. And if you've watched my gameplay, you know that I love harassing people in Scarecrow at the wall. It's just very powerful, mainly because this move right here, it's a counter hit mid that hits grounded and is plus on block. So almost any option, the opponent ends up in a dangerous situation. It's just fantastic. So I love this for Oki. It's a great situation. The low itself is minus 11 on block. So on the good side, it shows up as only -8 when you go into Scarecrow, but of course you can't block in Scarecrow, so don't get too excited about that. But down back 3 is another great little addition here to your toolkit. And now I think it's time to talk about down 3, and I just have in my notes here in capital letters it says huge, because this move is huge. It's very important for you, but it's not one of those good lows where you can just do it and not think about it. You actually have to strategize with this move a little bit. It's not as simple as it looks. So first of all, 22 frames to impact, so on the slow side, but fast enough that it works. And you have great crush properties and really good range, which is why it really works. So if you're standing out here, maybe your opponent is playing some keep out, for example. Maybe they're throwing electrics or, big moves. Paul maybe does a, his backswing 4 or whatever. You're throwing these moves to try and catch them, but they're blocking that. You don't have the life lead, and the clock is running out. Or you just want to go in and it's time to open something up. That's where this move becomes fantastic, because it's going to go under stuff. It's got great range, and you can really start mixing once you hit with this. So it's super important for that. Now the frame data is going to change depending on whether or not you stance transition. So if I do it normally, I get +2 on hit, which is very good, because it makes the while standing 4 uninterruptible. So this sequence right here is very safe, very reliable, great. And if they block the while standing 4, fine, back out, punish something. It's just a great safe little sequence. If you do transition by holding down, you get +4 and Mantis. And Mantis is dangerous with +4. Again, it's about how fast are your mids, your dangerous mids. Well, you've got great 13 frame mids. This thing is fantastic. You also have a counter hit 13 frame mid here. So +4 is dangerous. They have to worry about this. And the fact that you can just get it off of a low poke that is already great is, absolutely fantastic. Now, on block, if you don't transition, it's -15, so launch punishable by almost the entire cast. But if you do transition, it becomes -13, so only launch punishable by very few characters. And that is something to definitely keep in mind. If you're, it's matchup stuff. If you're playing against a character that can launch this, you have to think about that, keep it in mind, and use it in slightly different ways. Now, a very important thing that I see Zafina players forget, and this is super important if you're going to be successful with this move, is that you can actually block in Mantis, right? Which is important, right? So if I'm -13 here on the block, the opponent doesn't have a 13 frame launcher from while standing. They think that maybe I'm -14, -15, so they do a slower launcher. I can actually block that by just holding back when I'm in Mantis, which is great, and sometimes it will even open up an opportunity for me to block punish them. But I see a lot of people do this move, and then they don't hold back to block when they should, and they get a hit, even though they could have blocked those moves. So remember that, just like when you're standing up, if you hold back, you can actually block in Mantis, and it's very important. This move has counter hit properties. If you hit with it normally, you can do this mini combo, which is just 34, but, pretty good off of a low like that. If you transition and get the counter hit, you get a bigger combo. It's not full combo damage, but almost. You know, it's 50 plus, so it is very dangerous. And this move would have been essential, even if it didn't have this amazing counter hit stuff. So it's just a very, very important move for this character. But when you need to get in, when you need to start mixing and dealing some damage, you can open with this. If you hold down, you get that +4, and now you're mixing, you're doing stuff from Mantis. And, you know, depending on how that goes, you can keep going, or again, slink back out. But for all these reasons, it's just an extremely important move, and I think it deserves to be counted as one of the best lows in this game. Alright, I'm going to start talking about stances soon, but I think before that, I just want to talk about some bits and pieces, some slightly more situational moves that are still good that Zafina uses outside of stance. I'll start by mentioning that you have a hop kick. This is up forward 4. It's 17 frames to impact as opposed to 15, so you don't really use it the way, you know, characters usually use hop kicks, block punishment, you know, with punishment after a sidestep, things like that, because you have better things for that. You use this specifically when you want that low crush, but that can be good, even though it is situational. I use it, you know, maybe a couple of times per session when I play this character, but every time I do, I get a nice big combo. So for example, Asuka is out here, you know, she does her thing where she slides in and recovers in crouch, and you just think that she's going to do that swiping attack with the hand on the legs with countered properties. Chloe has something similar, and instead of like blocking or parrying that, you just launch it with a hop kick, and it's really good. So fantastic move. You can slink out of a lot of like stance mix-ups, you know, Leroy's Hermit mix-up with this, stuff like that. So it is occasionally very good, but on the slow side, so keep that in mind. Same -13 that you would expect on almost any hop kick. Down back 2, I'll also mention, this is one of your fastest counter hit moves at 13 frames to impact. It's not fantastic. It's not like you get a combo here. That would be very broken. But it is safe on block at -9, which is great. It is fast, and it does crush. So this is very good for getting people off you when you're eating a lot of pressure. Like I mentioned earlier, your main counter hit launcher is 16. So the fact that this is 13 just means that it has application for those pressure situations, right? I usually do a back 3. As you can tell right here, they can actually escape that. They usually don't, which is why I do it. But when they start escaping your back 3, you can throw it down 2 instead and get a bit of damage that way. But I like it for an interruption tool. I also like it at the start of the round if I'm going to start attacking, which you shouldn't always do. But it beats a lot of options because of the speed, because of the crush, and you can just get a nice big chunk here in the beginning and start the round off strong. So it's good for that as well. Next, down forward 1+2. Cool, strange little move. Very slow to impact at 36, but it still works because you can tell that Zafina kind of flails like she's doing an attack, stops, and then attacks again. And that tricks a lot of people. This looks weird. It looks similar to like going into Mantis. It looks similar to your main Snake Edge. It looks, you know, tricky. It's difficult to know that it's this move that is coming, and then it has homing properties, is mid and safe on block. So, you know, throw it as long as you don't get interrupted. You know, it's a great move, and if you get the hit, it's fantastic because it's a big combo. So I like to throw this when I have a lot of advantage. For example, Rage Drive on block. You get a lot of advantage. The opponent just isn't going to swing generally, and you have time to wind this up. A specific situation where it does a lot of work, it's kind of funny, is actually the Yoshimitsu matchup. Because you know how Yoshi players, they like to have like their favorite little thing that they do, and then they spin out to the side. They start spinning and looking for a whiff punish opportunity. If you throw this when they start spinning, it's got homing properties and good range. It will actually chase Yoshi's spin down and launch him for massive damage. So it can really mess with spinny Yoshis. Very situational, but very good when it works. You can shut that down completely with this thing, which is great. But yeah, fantastic little move. You use it in some counter hit combos as a damage filler hit as well. So I like it. Next, Forward 1 plus 2, this is your main wall bounce move. You don't really do a lot of bouncing with Zafina, but this thing is good because they buffed it recently, making it a -9, so safe on block. The fact that it's mid and safe means that you can use this. It was pretty much useless before. You're not going to get it a lot of the time, but when you do, you can throw it in a mix-up situation mainly is when you would do it. And if the opponent does duck, then you hit with this and you can get a nice big combo at the wall. So, it's pretty good. Not massive, but if you like bouncing, this is what you will be using for that. Bag 3 is your main power crush with the character. This is slow and not as great as people seem to believe, but it does have some really cool properties with it. Mainly that it's safe on block on a mid, which is amazing, but it also hits grounded, right? So again, in the Oki situation, I'm kind of realizing as I'm making this that Zafina is kind of crazy on the Oki. But it's going to hit people on the ground, but, spring kicks or anything like that is just going to armor through that, hit them, and give you a bunch of damage. It's not like you get advantage on hit, by the way, so don't keep swinging after this, unless, again, mental frames, the opponent just doesn't know it, which is likely. It doesn't look like something where Zafina would be at disadvantage, but she forces herself to stand around and dance for a little bit, so she is. If you are applying it for Oki, just keep in mind that, of course, low attacks cancel armor in this game, so if they do a get up low, then that's going to be a problem. But yeah, it's just a great move, and your main armor move outside of stances. So if you need armor, there you go. Back 3, it's that done. 442, yeah, so this is, again, occasionally useful. This is a counter hit plus on block high. It's only +1, but it's something. Maybe you can use it for a cheeky frame trap. But it's just homing, it's fast, and you can check people with it. Don't overestimate the range, not as good as it looks, but I can sometimes use it as a complement to 444, and the added benefit of that counter hit property is really good, but it is a high, so not as solid as this. Another really good usage of 442 is if you put somebody on the wall, you can throw this really quickly, and it's going to be a very high damage, 28 damage option for breaking the wall and going through it. So it's good for that as well. And it's a spin move, so you do use it in some, max damage combos, but they're kind of difficult. So look at some combo compilations if you want to see how it's applied that way. I also want to talk a bit about forward 3. This is only -1 on block, which is kind of interesting, but it's kind of like a long-range keep-out launching high single-hit launcher, but you do get good damage for hitting with this. I personally basically have never used it, but I've seen very good Zafina players who do, so it definitely has its area of application. But it's just a big keep-out high. And because it's safe on block, you can throw it, but they can duck, they can go under, they can come in with, stand stuff that crushes highs and stuff as well. So I don't think it's super good. One cool application for it is after your while standing 1-2 launcher, you can use this as a spin move and do good combos. But keep in mind that only works on standard size characters or larger. So it's not going to work on, small female characters, Kunimitsu, Eliza, characters like that. I'll also mention here that you do have a reversal with Zafina. I'm trying to use it more. I think it's better than I gave it credit for. But this is basically one of those power-crushing reversals, very similar to what Kazumi has. So if they hit into the armor property, you take the damage, and then you will deal 35 damage back. There's an initial stunning hit for 5, and then an additional 30. And it's just another tool for getting pressure off of you. But if you're in a stance mix-up situation, you're playing against Leroy, for example, and he's going to do a Hermit mix-up, you have to keep in mind that the lows are going to cancel that armor. So, a cheeky way to get out of pressure situations, but I wouldn't rely on it too much. I'd probably try and stay evasive with movement instead, or maybe apply one of these. But it's really cool when it hits. I love using the claw, and it's an option that you have. Alright, I think I want to leave neutral for now and start talking about our different stances. There's always more to say when you do these guides, but you have to draw the line somewhere. I'm going to start with Scarecrow. So with Scarecrow, you can transition manually with 3+4. You usually don't, but it's an option that you have. And the way you get out of the stance, which is important because that is something that you do want to do a lot, you press down and back. In Scarecrow, you cannot block, which is why it's a very committal stance. You pretty much have to know what you want to do quite quickly. But if you're causing the opponent to hesitate, you do have the option of moving. So you cannot block, but you can move. She's hopping on one leg, so you don't have to backdash cancel or anything. You can just hold back, and she'll do a pretty good backdash, honestly, for being in a stance. Or you can hop forward, and you can also move to the sides. But when you go to the sides, she will move like diagonally forwards like this. But yeah, you do have the option of moving, but you cannot block. Very important. And you escape out with down and back, or you can press down 3+4, which is gimmicky and not used that often, but you can do a cool little Mantis transition like that as well. Your main transitions for this move include 4-4-3, 1-3, one of your main jab strings, 3 by itself, 4-2-3, which is mainly used in combos. You can use it outside of combos, but the second hit is a duckable high, so dangerous and something to keep in mind. Mantis 1-3, which is probably my favorite move from Mantis, a fantastic move. 1-2-3, which is a non-natural extension to your 1-2. That can surprise people and do a bit of an unpredictable transition into the stance, which can be good. While standing 3, which is the plus on block high with transition that you can use for frame traps, very good. And down forward 3, which is the first hit of that block punishing and whiff punishing string that I mentioned earlier. And for all of these moves, for Scarecrow in general, when you do a move, if you do nothing, she goes into the stance, but if you hold back, she doesn't. And that will change the frame data situation usually on block and hit. And this is where the amount of information to know about Zafina kind of swells a little bit, and it's going to take a bit of getting used to. But because you are trying to set up these mix-up situations with the character, it's a good idea to be aware of the frame data, at least, roughly. And most of the time, if I get a hit, I tend to actually go into the stance, because being with just a little bit of advantage in Scarecrow is very good and very powerful. And what I'm trying to do is get these powerful mix-ups going. So on hit, I would say most of the time, going into the stance is quite favorable. So for mix-ups, like I said, all the stances can be used for mix-ups, and for Scarecrow, the mix-up that you use is, well, the low is almost always going to be down forward 4, or Scarecrow down forward 4. This has counter hit properties, it's got massive range, it's got tracking and crush properties, and it's unreactable. So it's just a fantastic low for almost everything. You don't get huge damage, 17, but it's something. But you get +7 on hit. So this is a classic throw setup that I use. I'll do this, go under, and then do a throw, because they pretty much have to stand there and watch the attempt. Because of the +7, they have to respect it. But if they break, on the break, Zafina usually just slinks back out to a comfortable range anyway, and then you can kind of start over with maybe back 3. So it's a good little throw setup. For the counter hit properties, I usually just collect a guaranteed back 3 for 38, which is very good. But if it doesn't work at all ranges, but if you're kind of close, you can actually go into Mantis by holding down, and then you can do Mantis down 4-2 and turn this into more of a complete combo, which is of course very good. But like I say, sometimes it's a bit inconsistent, so keep that in mind. Whereas the back 3 is usually very reliable here, so that's why I like it. But what a fantastic low, and I don't see any reason really to be using a lot else when it comes to lows from the stance, but you have a couple of options that we will talk about. Now for the mid, it's a little bit more interesting. The main mid that you have from Scarecrow, of course, is the 1+2. This is a fantastic, kind of crazy move in a lot of ways. So it's mid, it's plus on block, which is really good, +6, and you can go into Tarantula with +6, which is fantastic as well. It's the same +6 if you don't go in. Counter hit launcher, decent range, difficult to avoid with movement generally, even though it's possible. So just good for everything. And like I mentioned earlier, it hits on the ground, so it makes it just one of the most terrifying Oki tools in the game, because there's almost no option where the opponent survives it. Best case scenario for them, they stand up and block it, and then you get advantage and you just mix again. So it's very good. The one weakness of the move really is that it can be avoided with movement. Going to the side is usually kind of dangerous for them because it catches that a lot of the time, but they can sometimes backdash out, especially if the opponent character has a good backdash. So for example, the Zafina mirror, you'll see people go into this and then I want to apply my 1+2, but the Zafina backdashes and then I get punished for that. So that's the one danger of it, but it's just such a crazy fantastic move. So that's what I'm going to be using for my mixing mid most of the time. You get guaranteed follow-ups even, which is kind of crazy. If you hit with it without transitioning, you can do back 3. If you hit and you do transition, you can do Tarantula down 1+2. And both are good damage. So I mean, what a crazy good move. Just be aware that sometimes the opponent can slink out and you have to be careful. Something you can do actually, if you're causing some mental hesitation, is go into the stance with advantage and then do a little hop forward and then apply it. It's going to take a bit of bravery on your part, but it definitely sometimes works to reposition before you apply the mix-up, especially for Oki when the opponent doesn't have that many options, and they're thinking about how they want to get up. If you're in Scarecrow, you reposition, you move with them a little bit, and just as they're trying to get up, that's when you blow them up. So keep in mind that you can stay mobile in the stance. Pretty important. But other alternative mids you can use for the mix here is the 3 string. So 3 by itself is a 13 frame mid poke, which is very good. And then you have 2 extensions. 3/3 is mid-mid, which is pretty cool. And then 3/4/3 is mid-high and duckable. But it's plus on block, which is really great. You get +3. So this is how you create frame traps near the wall with the character, and then when you get it at the wall, you can do big combos. So it's potentially very powerful. You just have to be aware of the duckability of this second hit right here. But both options are natural, so they will work for mix-up situations, and just the 3 by itself is really quite good for that because it's fast, good range. So a cool little move. You also have the option of doing the 2 here, and I really like the 2. It's 14, so uninterruptible in a lot of situations, but, excuse me, the reason it's so cool is it's a counter-hit launcher, and you get pretty big damage here, so it's super strong. So I mentioned that frame trap earlier where you do, while standing 3 like that, get your +5 and then apply this, and you get a full combo. 2/2 is a string. It's not safe on block, but it's not too bad. She goes out of the stance, out of Scarecrow, so you can't block again, but you're -10. The really cool thing here is that the second hit also has counter hit properties. It's going to knock them down to the ground like this. And here, the way I like to chase this knockdown situation is I almost always apply a 1+2, because the 1+2, if they stay on the ground and do nothing, it's not going to work, but it basically hits everything else. So 90% of the time, this catches people, and it's pretty big extra damage to get in that situation. So I love that, and it's got the counter properties and everything else. So a nice little setup. But yeah, the 2 is pretty cool for an alternative mid here. You also have the option of doing your Scarecrow 4, and this is an important move and kind of the main reason they always have to be scared of Scarecrow. It's armored, it's fast, it's got high crush, and it gives you a massive combo, but it's launch punishable on block. So this is one of those very committal things. But sometimes you just know that the opponent's going to swing and it's good. Sometimes you know that they're going to duck and it's good, or do a high and you crush it and you launch. And it's important to sometimes just remind everybody that it exists, because that allows you for a lot more room to sort of mix and play games when you're in Scarecrow. But it's just a really good move. But you will get launched when it gets blocked, right? So that's kind of the main mix-up when you're in Scarecrow. I think the down forward 4 is really the star of the show here, and just an amazing move overall. Other good moves in Scarecrow, or other moves that you actually do have a 10-frame jab here, which is cool because you can check it and keep people honest. So, you go in, check him once, and then you mix. And if they swing and you get a hit right here, it's +9, which is really great. It's -2 on block, but you're in Scarecrow, So it's not like applying a normal jab outside of stance, but it's just a quick check, and then you commit to doing something bigger usually. But in Season 4, they actually gave this a very interesting extension. It's a new move for the character. It's 1-4 from Scarecrow, and this gives you +7 on hit and Tarantula. And Tarantula, again, has powerful, fast mids, right? So it's actually a pretty interesting, good little string right here. And it also, avoids stuff because Tarantula goes down and low profile. So something that I should be using more, even though I haven't applied it a whole lot yet. But definitely a cool little option. I love the fact that it's high mid, by the way, as opposed to high high. Pretty important. Next, you have your 3+4, and this is your main spin move from Scarecrow. I know some people like to use this as a mix-up mid option from the stance. I haven't done that, so I'm not going to recommend it, but I've heard some good players talk about it being good, not just for spinning, but I use it mainly as my spin move for combos. But it exists. Then you have your Scarecrow down 4, and this is the low that you use to chase people who are trying to avoid Scarecrow mix-ups by backdashing out of them, because this chases them really quite far. So you go in, they are worried about the 1+2, so they backdash, and then you chase them down with this, and then I usually apply a while standing 4, because you recover crouching for the wake up right there, and that catches a lot of people for a bit of extra damage as well. So a cool little sequence. But down 4 is very situational, but every once in a while when you just want to do something big from a range, or they're trying to escape backwards, you can chase them with this, and it does a job. You have down 3 as well. This down 3 is when you need just a fast low when they're on the ground. Again, it's good for Oki. Down 4 is better in most situations, but this has extensions, so you can do down to keep them guessing, and you can do down 3, or down 3-3, and the down 3-3 is low high, but it gives you that same +3 that the 3-4-3 does, and a lot of people don't know that, so a lot of people will swing into this, and then you get that guaranteed knockdown wall splat off of this string. So it's another frame trapping option. Not a huge fan of this, but it does work, and because you have the second hit, you can keep people guessing and be cheeky with it. But yeah, not a huge fan of it. Before we leave Scarecrow, I just want to mention that you do have a Scarecrow wall combo, and you will sometimes use this because you will be in Scarecrow when you splat, or you go into it when you're converting for the wall splat, right? So when that happens, the combo you can do is 3-4-3 Scarecrow 4. It's consistent, it's high damage, and it allows you to apply that fantastic Scarecrow Oki after the combo as well. I like to create a kind of an Oki trap with my wall combo using 4-2-3, but I'm going to talk more about that once we get to the actual wall section of the guide. But for now, let's go back to the middle and talk about our second stance, which is going to be Mantis. Looks like this. You go in manually with down 3+4, which you almost never do, and then you cancel with down back, which you will do. It has a built-in little backdash here, which is good. It's evasive. Sometimes you don't want to commit to do anything from the stance, and that's when you just dip back out with this, and then you can stay mobile again. So really important. When you're in Mantis, you can block uniquely, which is really cool, and you can move. You can move backwards, you can move to the sides, and for moving forwards, you can hold forward to do this awkward kind of walk, or you can double tap to actually do a nice little forward dash, which is pretty good, and it's going to be important in some combo situations as well. So let's talk about some transitions. 4-4-3+4 is an important move. I'm going to talk more about it in a little bit, but let's just mention the rest of the transitions first. Down 3 down, we talked about this earlier. Probably the main way you go into this stance, and a very important situation to understand for the character. +4 with Mantis is really good. You have down back 4 down. Scarecrow down 3+4, kind of gimmicky. You also have the wild standing 2 down option to do that. Don't abuse it against a good player. They will chase you down and kill you. Tarantula 4 and Scarecrow down 4 down, which is what I mentioned earlier, where you can get that nice little combo if you score a counter hit. But let's talk a bit more about 4-4-3+4 before we move on. It's a favorite of mine. It's a fantastic move. I affectionately refer to it as the starfish because of the way it animates. I don't know what it's actually called. So you can consider this kind of the big brother of forward forward 4. So in the beginning section, I talked about how this is like a neutral tool that you throw all the time from a range to check the opponent. If you have a bit more range and you want to do something a little bit more committal, you go to this. It's a 2-hit string for 31, which is big. It's natural, of course. And the second hit here is extremely difficult to evade or get away from. You almost never see people successfully move to the side out of the way of this because it's just super sticky and seems to follow people as Zafina is flying. It also hits grounded. So for Oki, it's just really great because they're over there. You do this and, you know, it's going to hit them on the ground. It's going to hit them, you know, if they try and get up because it's mid. So great move. And you can go into Mantis off of this. And that's where it gets a little bit complex. And we have to talk about the safety of the move right now. So the way it works is basically this. The move is unsafe on block. Normally like this, you can tell minus 11. But because you have the option of going into Mantis, that's going to turn it into minus 12. See if I can do it fast enough here. There we go. So it becomes minus 12, but now if the opponent is trying to punish me standing with the minus 11, I'm going to go under the jabs because I'm, you know, ducking where I'm in Mantis. And that's very dangerous for them because I can do powerful stuff from down here. So the opponent basically doesn't know which punisher to apply. And what that ends up meaning, basically the conclusion here is that 99% of the time you can just consider this a safe move. It's what I tend to do when I play online. I just have this in my safe move arsenal, and then very rarely somebody good will successfully block punish it, and that's when it's important to keep in mind the way it actually works, but it's extremely rare, and for the most part just use it as if it were a safe move. It's one of your combo enders as well. It creates fantastic wall splats, breaks walls and floors, and it's going to splat when the opponent is standing at the wall too. So just a huge area of application and a fantastic move. But because of the unique interaction with Mantis, I just wanted to talk a bit more about it right here. But let's talk about mix-ups again. So the main mix-up that you apply when you go into Mantis, my favorite mid in this stance is actually the 1-3. This is really cool. If you go out of Scarecrow here by again holding back, it's safe on block, which is great. If you get a hit and you go into the stance, you're +9 in Scarecrow. So again, mix up chains, right? You do this, you get a hit, you mix, you're successful, you go into Scarecrow, you mix again, you do this, you're successful, and now you get to mix again. And that's kind of how it keeps going with the character, right? And where most of your damage derives from, really, because your punishment damage is low and your combo damage is kind of below average as well, right? So when you manage to get 2 successful or 3 successful mix-ups in a row with this character, that's really how you just take a lot of damage off the opponent. Another really good mid for just a fast mix-up from Mantis is the 2, and I like this because it's 13 frames, so fast, but also a counter hit launcher, and you get big damage, so really good. And they have to respect the stance because of the fact that that exists. It's connected to this stance here that you can use as a combo because the final hit is a spin move, but it's just something to, again, keep things guessing, and you're kind of alternating the hits right here, which is pretty cool. Not natural, by the way. So I think the 2 by itself is really the best option here for a mix-up mid. Now for a mix-up low in Mantis, I think my favorite option is probably the down 3. This is really cool. It's fast at 15, which is crazy, but the really insane thing about this move is that you have a mid extension that, as you can tell, is safe on block right here, because you can block in Mantis, right? And this second hit is a normal hit launcher, and the string is a natural counter hit combo. So if the opponent is disrespecting Mantis, you hit them with this, and you get a combo that is actually kind of huge, which is cool. It's big damage when you hit with this, so they have to be worried about this low. It's fast, it's got range, and that's why I really like it for a mix-up here, right? Other good moves from Mantis. 3-4-4 is a cheeky string that you have. So the way this works is that all of the hits, if you look here, are punishable. So let's see if we can do this maybe to get him to block it. Let's just set him to all guard. Probably be easier for this. So the 3 is punishable, the 3-4 is punishable, and the 3-4 down 4 is also punishable. It gets more punishable as it goes along, but because they don't know how many hits you're going to do, it's difficult to punish, and you can do 3, instead of 3-4 down 4, you can do 3-4-4, and she does this jumping hit into the air, which you know, is mid and is going to mix that final low. But it's just another thing that they have to worry about. But mainly I use the first hit or the first and second to just stack a little bit of damage on the legs when I'm in this stance. I don't think it's super useful. I don't like to do like really long strings in Mantis because it just becomes a little bit predictable and easy to deal with for the opponent. But it exists. Down 4. This is a pretty good move from Mantis. It's got counter hit properties and massive range, so you can use it for a kind of a mix-up option from a range. But if you do get that counter hit, you're going to be able to collect another guaranteed back 3 here, which is something you do a lot with the character, I'm sure you're noticing, but it's just really good. And there are situations where this will be a guaranteed hit as well, but it's just got really good range. So it's, again, kind of a similar move to the down 4 from Scarecrow. So that's really cool. And then you have the 4-3. This is a low mid. Punishable on block, but has pushback. The cool thing about it is that it's a counter hit launcher. And it's fast enough that it is scary. So it's just another reason they really have to worry about the counter hit properties of Mantis. So Mantis is kind of the counter hitty stance, really quite powerful. You've got your Mantis 1+2, which is your armor move. Again, you're going to get guaranteed stuff on the ground here, which is really cool. It's not safe. Again, if we turn on all guard here just to demonstrate that. You can tell it's -13, so a bit of a risk, but when somebody is like running at you when you're in Mantis from a bit of a range, you do this and you get big damage. So again, they have to respect the stance, and all this stuff is why Zafina is kind of scary in stance. You don't know what she's going to do, even you could probably deal with the individual options that she has. You never know exactly what she's going to do, and you don't know how many hits she's going to do, when she's going to stop, when she's going to delay something, when she's going to wait. And that's why they end up kind of, you know, confused, and that's when you just pile on the damage with the character. It's really pretty cool. Up forward 3. This is pretty cool. It's kind of the final hit of that low string we looked at earlier. But I actually really like this move. And I use it for Okia as well, because if I'm in Mantis and the opponent's going to do like a get up 3 because they think, oh, he's, you know, in the stance, he's committed, I'm going to counter hit him on the way up, you just jump over that and slam them with this, which is pretty cool. So I like that about it. In Mantis, you also have down forward 4, new move for this season, and it's your homing option. This is important because some of these stances are actually kind of vulnerable to a lot of mobility in the opponent. If you go in here and you think you're going to mix and the opponent just starts walking, then, you know, all of your attacks are these advancing things that make that super dangerous. They can get your side, they can get your back, and so I guess they thought you needed some sort of a decent homing option here, and this is great. You get +13 and Tarantula, and +13 and Tarantula is very dangerous again for mix-up. So if you find people are walking your stances, keep this move in mind. And then we also have the Mantis down 4-2, and I've mentioned it earlier. The cool thing about this is that it is a safe on block mid launcher, which is very rare in Tekken and very valuable when it exists. It's kind of slow. It's not going to do that much work for you, but sometimes you throw it as kind of a mix-up thing. If the opponent ducks or does something, the fact that you can get an entire combo for doing this, even though it's a pretty small one, it's just really, really cool. But yeah, Mantis is kind of a complex stance with a bunch of weird strings. You can block in it. Mainly you're just doing stuff off of the down 3 here. But when you're in here and trying to really get stuff going, really aiming for those counter hits, The final stance to talk about is Tarantula. This is the really creepy, cool-looking one. It used to be sort of the banned stance of the character, but it's been improved, and I actually think it's really useful now. So you can go in manually with down 1+2. Again, you almost never do that, but it is important to know how to cancel out with down back. And when you're in this stance, you can not move anywhere but forward. So you can't go back, you can't go to the side, you can only crawl forwards like this. So you're very locked into, a straight line. But it's really creepy, it freaks people out, and they do dumb stuff. They swing, and then you hit them and you get damage, so it's pretty cool. But really cool little stance right here. Some of the main transitions include Scarecrow 1+2 down, which is pretty powerful. That's where you get the guaranteed Tarantula down 1+2. Mantis down forward 4. So that's the homing move that we saw earlier. Up forward 1+2, which is honestly a pretty cool move for like ending rounds. It's kind of like when Brian and King, they like to just throw themselves in the air when they've got a life lead near the end of the round. And you can do that with this because it's got good range and it puts you in a very evasive position even though you're not grounded. And they have to panic because there's not enough time, and then you hit them and you get more damage. So a pretty cool move right there. Scarecrow 1-4, which is that new move from Scarecrow, and just your regular 1-4, which is the highest damage option you have for a 10-frame block punisher, by the way. It's not that useful, but the cool thing about it is that it is a counter hit launcher, and if you do a Tarantula 1+2, you can actually get a pretty decent combo right there, which is nice. In terms of the mix-up when you're in Tarantula, this is really all about the mid, in my opinion, and I love the main mid from Tarantula. It's one of my favorite moves in all of Tekken because not only is it good, not only is it satisfying to hit with, it also works for me thematically. It's the 3, and you can tell she cocks her leg up over her back, which looks exactly like the stinger of a scorpion. And you know how Zafina is kind of like an arachnid kind of a based character, so I think thematically it's cool, but the move is fantastic as well. When it connects, you can do a Tarantula down 1+2 guaranteed and get damage like that, which is really great. So it's just a very powerful mixing option, but it's really like the main dangerous fast thing you have from Tarantula. So the fact that this exists is really the main reason opponents have to respect this stance. Other moves from Tarantula tend to be really quite slow. The main low mix-up here is the down 1+2. The down 1+2 is really good. It's slow, but it's got massive range, and it almost never gets defended against. It's just really good. And when you get the hit here, you can do a Mantis down 4, which is that sliding low we saw earlier, and that's going to be a guaranteed follow-up. So big damage overall. You get guaranteed stuff on the ground generally when you're applying stuff with Tarantula. Tarantula 1 is another low option that you have, and this is sort of a repeatable harassment option from the stance. It's very reminiscent, of course, of like Hunting Bear, for example, from Kuma, but the idea is you do this really fast, you get +5 when it hits, and then the opponent has to guess again. So if you watch some of the gameplay I've uploaded, I'll do this, get the +5, do it again, and get the +5, do it again, get the +5, and then uninterruptible mid, and I get, a bunch of damage. So it's a cool little harassment tool, and you can use it for a low in your mix-ups as well. Other good Tarantula moves. The 2 is pretty cool. This is a safe mid launcher again. It's super slow and kind of crazy, but it's similar to this thing where they don't really know what they're going to do about this animation. It's difficult to tell what she's actually doing here, and that's why it sometimes connects for you. So it's a pretty cool move. The Tarantula 1+2 is important because it's a low crushing spinning move. And again, guaranteed back 3s, which we love with this character. We get it whenever we can, which is quite often. This is unsafe, but the reason it's important to keep in mind is that when you're in Tarantula, people want to step on you as if you were a spider, and you jump over their feet, over their low attacks with this, and it beats that by crushing it, which is really good. So I kind of love this move, and I use it a lot, a little bit too much, because again, it is block punishable, and I do eat some damage for it, but I'm just a fan of it. Alright, what else? Tarantula 4. This is part of a string, but it's a Mantis transition, which is pretty cool. And if you have a counter hit here, it becomes a massive launcher, but this is unsafe on block, and you do have a version of this when you're just standing normally as well. Remember I talked about the down 2 and how it's a guaranteed hit on the ground sometimes. You actually have down to 4-3, and it's pretty much the same thing as the 4-3 from Tarantula right there. Yeah, there we go. I think that's pretty much it for Tarantula. I mean, it's the smallest and probably least useful of the stances, but just the fact that the Scorpion Stinger right here and this low, that they're so powerful and that you get that guaranteed damage, it really means that this is an essential part of your gameplay with the character as well, and you should never forget about Tarantula, and maybe use some of these new transitions that they've given her, this thing, but I think even more importantly this thing, get your +7 and then do some really cool stuff from the stance. It's better than you would suppose. We finally gone through the stances. Now I want to take some time to talk about your block punishment with this character, and you'll be sad to know that it's, in my opinion, Zafina's weakest aspect. Her block punishment is below average in a lot of ways, and she tends to get her damage elsewhere, but it is important that you get as much as you can when you can, and sometimes your punishment will lead to those powerful mix-ups, and then you can get your damage that way. So with standing, for 10 frames, I think 1-3 is what you want to use. The 1-4 does exist. The 1-2 does exist. You have a couple of options here, but I think the 1-3 is just best. You get 21, which isn't huge. If you hold back, it's +1. If you don't, and you go into Scarecrow, +7 in Scarecrow, and that's really the big draw of this Punisher, and it's what kind of saves her fast standing punishment, because that mix-up situation is really scary. +7 is big. Moving up to 12, you have the down 1. This is not good, as you can tell. It's a shitty move in general. You can do some delay stuff with it and get counter hits maybe. But there are some situations where you need specifically a 12 frame mid. It's rare, but when that happens, this is the only option you have. For 13, it's the down forward 1-4. So that's the fantastic extension to your down forward 1 that I mentioned. But as you can tell right here, you don't get 30 plus damage, you don't get a knockdown, you do get a wall splat because it is a spin move and it gives you ballerina spin, but this is just not good. I mean, a lot of players have, 30 plus damage and a huge knockdown wall splat for 12. You don't even get it for 13. But for 14, you have something amazing because it's this thing that I mentioned as a whiff punisher earlier. It's also one of your main options for block punishment. So when you block something that is -15 with this character, because you don't have a 15 frame launcher, this is what you use instead. But because you get 50 or 49, it's big enough that it really matters. And the Oki situation again here is just incredible. So I think this is a fantastic move, and this is what I would use for specifically -14 and 15. And then for 16, you get your down 4-2, which is your great main launcher with the character. And I don't think there's any reason to go much higher than that for block punishment, unless we're talking about pushback moves, in which case 1+2 4 is good for the range, 16 frames to impact, pretty cool. Back 1+2 is actually going to be used as a pushback block punisher for the character sometimes, this really fast low. It's not a lot of damage, but in some situations, Heihachi is doing 4-4-2, for example. You can throw this and know that it's going to work, and you get something so that they can't be super comfortable, doing their pushback moves all the time. And then, of course, the Cursed Crow is 18, so kind of slow, but it does some work in that department as well. For while standing punishment, it actually gets even a little bit worse for Zafina. She has a while standing 4 at 18, so it's not tiny damage, and it's a decent little thing here. Pretty standard overall. The range isn't terrible, but then you don't really get anything else for your while standing punishment until we get up to 15. So those lows that you like to block a lot that are -12, -13, and some characters, you're playing Negan, for example, and you get that fantastic while standing 1-2 every time. Damage, stance mix-up. She doesn't get that, so she's a little bit weak in the legs in that sense, and people will sometimes abuse low pokes on her for that reason. But at 15, you get your launcher again. While standing 1-2 is really good. The combo is awkward because when you do your standard combo with this, which looks like this, by the way, that second hit of the spin move right there is inconsistent after this launch. And that's why you will usually want to do different combo paths like that, for example. And like I mentioned, on larger targets, you can do this as that thing as well. So you're going to get somewhere, 55 to 60 damage. Not huge, but the move is really good anyway because it's delayable and you can situation confirm this. And when you do, essentially, if you're good, you can turn this into a very difficult to deal with pseudo safe launcher here, and it is fast and it just works really well. I'll just mention that you can of course do a hop kick from while standing for 17 if you want to. And then you also have for 18 frames the while standing 2, which is your larger, sort of more powerful while standing launcher. However, because of the bad recovery speed on it, it doesn't lead to huge damage. You're going to have to do, some creative floating here to get your damage. It's not bad, but it's not huge either, compared to this. It's in the same area. I'll also mention quickly that your Rage Drive is a 14 frame move. Plus on block and a fantastic high damage launcher. So if you're in the rare situation that you're block punishing something that is 14 and you happen to be in rage, this is going to be a massive option for you. I prefer actually to use it as a 14 frame really fast high damage whiff punisher or interruption tool, but it is an option as well. So that's pretty much it for block punishment, and as you can tell, it's not massive for this character. It is her weaker aspect. The fact that she gets nothing for 12, 13, 14 from while standing sucks, but capitalize on the few good options that you do have. And then get into your mix-up game or your whiff punishment game and get your damage that way instead. Luckily, block punishment is not an essential part of being successful in online Tekken these days. Well, it is, but not to the extent that maybe it should be. It's more about those mix-ups, those mids, those counter hits, Let's talk a little bit about the wall. Zafina's wall game is actually really good in a lot of ways, especially when you're using your stances. Let's go over and talk about a couple of splatting options. Down forward 1-4 is probably the main one because it's really fast. People will duck often here at the wall looking for this, and that's where you mix in the mid and you get your damage, right? But you can do this and then step to the side and keep doing some pretty creative, sidewall combos with this. It's reliable and good. Just be careful about the duck. And again, same thing with like all of your strings with Zafina. Keep mixing your options, keep them guessing. They should never be comfortable. They will guess right sometimes and you will get punished, but they should never be comfortable about doing that. They should get lucky every time that happens is basically what you're aiming for. 4-4-3+4, the Starfish is fantastic, especially from a range, especially because it's got good tracking. 4-4-4, again, amazing for everything. A homing move, which is great because they're going to try and walk to the sides to get away from the wall, which is very good. Back 4-4 is an interesting move that I almost never use, but it is probably something that I should use more because it's a hit confirmable little mid string here. So similar to something like what Miguel would do. A lot of characters have strings like this, down back 1+2 with Leo. It's mid, it's punishable, but if you hit confirm it properly and you really are fast, then it's basically a safe, guaranteed, really high damage wall splat. So back 4-4 is pretty cool. I like the animation. It's kind of, Zafina-esque and wonky, which I like. But again, I almost never apply it. Just be aware that it exists. Maybe you will find more use for it. 4-4-2 is the really fast counter hit high that I mentioned earlier in the guide as well. It will work. It's better for breaking specifically, in my opinion. And then the Scarecrow 3-4-3 is just fantastic as well, especially when you're creating those frame traps. So that's really cool. I'm just going to mention a couple of wall combo options. I'm not doing normal combos in this guide because I just feel at this point there are so many great, compilations with notations all over the internet. So just go to your favorite one of those and you can learn how to combo with the character. I think I did a couple when she was new as well. So they're out there, but there is some more to say about specifically the wall right here. So the standard wall combo is you can do down forward 1, and then you do the down forward 1-2-1 string, but you delay the final hit to make sure that you get your like that. You want to get the 50% damage scaling on that final hit to make sure that you get good damage. If you have a little bit of height in your wall splat, you can do the same thing, but start off with an up forward one for a little bit more damage. Now, a favorite option of mine for creating very powerful Oki traps or frame traps at the wall is I will sacrifice a bit of damage in my wall combo and do this instead. So what you're seeing right here is 4, 2, 3, and then I'm doing a Scarecrow 3 for a bit of damage that recovers super quick, and now I'm in an amazing Oki situation at the wall. The opponent is on the ground, I've recovered, and I'm in Scarecrow, and my Scarecrow 1+2 is going to hit so many things. It's just so difficult and bad for the opponent to be in this position. I can stay in Scarecrow and do some like lows from Scarecrow. I can let this blast. If I get frame advantage because they stand up and block it, then, you know, I can mix again and maybe get even more wall splats. So I love this situation. 4-2-3 also has great range. So when you're, say you're spinning the opponent and they're landing somewhere in this area and you're kind of far away, you can run in and do this and it's just going to work. So a fantastic option. So you sacrifice a little bit of damage, but the Oki situation is amazing. And it's just a favorite trap of mine that I create when I'm at the wall. Next, I think I want to talk a bit about the fact that you do have a full crouch mix with the character. It's not a huge part of what she does, you know, she's not Kunimitsu, but there is some stuff here. This is full crouch down 4-3, and it's the low option that enables the full crouch mix-up. Again, guaranteed back 3. We love the guaranteed back 3. We get it all over town. But it's big damage, it's powerful. So, you know, these two hits together is enough that this is really something to worry about for the opponent. And then you can mix with while standing 4, very safe, good option. But you also have that, you know, situation confirmable, pseudo confirmable while standing launcher here. So really something to worry about for the opponent as well. If they hesitate, again, the while standing 3, I've mentioned it before, it is a high, but a favorite of mine. And when you get a hit with it and you're close, you can usually get a guaranteed Scarecrow 4 for pretty good damage as well. So I think your full crouch mix-up is it's worth keeping in mind. Just be aware that this low here is, of course, launch punishable in a big way. Now, one cool way where you can access your full crouch mix-up is you can apply this string right here, which is down forward 4-1, down forward 4-1, and down forward 4-2 are block punishment options, 14 frames, so I'm not a huge fan of it. I prefer to do this, which is why I haven't mentioned it, but specifically this option right here, down forward 4-1, which is another floor breaking option that you have, by the way, can be cancelled with down going into crouch, which means that you can do this, the opponent is anticipating that hit, and then you apply your full crouch mix-up, which is really cool. And this works especially well as a cheeky trap for Oki. So you do this right here, you spin, right? And then you surprise them with a cancel, and as they stand up, you knock them down again, and you've added a bunch of extra damage on top of the combo that you were already doing. So that's really great. I also want to talk a little bit about Rage before we start wrapping this up. I've mentioned your Rage drive before, and it is just a fantastic move. It's going to freeze them in the air, even if they are already in the air when it connects, which is what is pretty unique about it. And you can still combo when that happens, even though the damage will be scaled down. But my favorite way to do it is actually, I love sidestepping into this and using it as a fast whiff punish. 14 is huge. If the opponent is applying a lot of pressure, you can attempt the interrupt with it, kind of like you would a counter hit move. And if they block it because it's plus on block, you know, it's still a pretty favorable situation for you. And when you've done that, that's the situation I mentioned when I love to apply this, because they have to stand and look at it, they hesitate or they mess up, they swing, and then you get your big launch. So it's mainly useful for that, and I don't use this to augment combos. And again, block Punisher at 14, of course. The Rage Rage Art is very standard. It's your standard mid, but the good thing about this is that it is at least a very reliable Rage Art. It does what it's supposed to. It's got good range and a healthy hitbox, which means that when you're doing like a long or just a standard combo with the character, if you do a single forward dash, you can always know and always be comfortable with the fact that this is going to connect. It's not one of those where you have to run really, really deep, you know, and then have to wait for the first part of the rage art animation to know whether or not you ran deep enough. Do a single forward dash and then do it right away, and at the end of even a long combo, it's going to work every time with this, which is just fantastic, you know, when you want to get that just a little bit extra damage at the end of a combo in the open, and you use the rage art for that. And that's really it in terms of her rage game. You have a 1+2 throw with the character. I haven't mentioned it so far, so I will. It's the forward 1+2, and you can actually chase them on the ground with a down 2 here as well. And very rarely do they escape that, so that's a bit of guaranteed damage and a potential round ender that you have for the character. So if I'm going to start to wrap my guide on Zafina up, basically you're switching between 2 modes with the character, and you do it on the fly all the time. So it's not like, you know, you choose one and go with that. It's dynamic, but you're doing a lot of movement, capitalizing on your fantastic backdash and sideways movement to create whiffs. And again, single poke into single backdash is very good. The opponent attacks and you block and they want to keep, or they get a hit and they want to keep going, you backdash out, again, with punish. Single backdash is crucial and very good. Backdash canceling, some situations even better. It's so fast and so good that they do a slash kick, and by the time the slash kick is animating, you've done 4 backdashes and you're out of range, and then you whiff punish them. So she does that, and then she wants to get big damage from stance mix-ups. She transitions with powerful things like her 1-3, which is a jab poke into advantage and Scarecrow, and with things like a down 3, which is one of the best lows in the game, +4 in Mantis, countered properties, combos in and out of stance, really fantastic. When you're just being a little bit more patient and playing in neutral, you throw big things from half screen. You can throw 4-4 most of the time. You can upgrade it a little bit to the 4-4 3+4, and you can also mix in the 4-4-2 for a nice counter hit option here, although that is high. So you can throw these safe options out here, pick your spots, stay mobile, and then you can go in, and that's when you turn into the spider, you know, and really start to try and eat the opponent, basically. And once you're doing your mix-ups, create these mix-up chains. You know, you go into Scarecrow with advantage, great. You do this move. Okay, now I'm in Tarantula, and I'm going to do this move. Then I'm going to do that move, guaranteed from Mantis, and you keep going. And then when the opponent does something successful to deal with that, or they stop you somehow, or you just feel like, you know, you've done enough crazy stuff, you back out and you go back to your comfortable range, and then you know, wait for the next opportunity to get one of those chains going again, is kind of where you get your damage. Because again, combos, not super high in terms of damage. Punishment, not super high in terms of damage. You have to rely on your chunky safe options and your mix-ups to get that damage. I really hope you enjoyed this. I think I'm going to wrap it up there. I hope I didn't miss anything. I probably did. This is a large move list and a complex character, but definitely give her a shot. It's one of the most fun characters to play that I've used in basically any game I've played. And I think at this point, you know, in late Season 4, pretty much my best character. The one that I'm kind of the most comfortable with when I just, you know, fire up the game and I want to go online. So check it out, give me any feedback that you have, and let me know about other characters that you would like me to do a guide like this on. It would have to be a character that I know quite well, because I'm not going to, you know, it's going to require a bit of prior knowledge to go this in depth on situations and stuff like this. But again, thank you so much for watching it. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys again very soon.